in Indian economy, Unit 5 Industrial Policy. Up till now, we have talked about industrial policy and its scope. We talked about the industrial policies of 1956, and then we moved over to discussion on industrial policy of 1991, and we talked about LPG in connection to the industrial policy of 1991, and we also talked about how it failed in achieving all its targets, which means basically that it failed in achieving some of its targets. So it could not achieve all the objectives that were set for the industrial policy of 1991. Then we started talking about industrial sickness, and we talked about the definitions and the symptoms of industrial sickness. And in the last session that we had, we basically talked about the causes. We talked about both the external as well as the internal causes. Now is the time for us to discuss the impact of industrial sickness on the overall economy and the other enterprises in the economy. So the first thing is that there is a loss of government revenue. Why is there a loss of government revenue? See, all the firms, they have to basically pay a corporate tax, just like we have to pay as an individual income tax, just like that the corporate firms have to pay the corporate tax. So naturally, if a particular firm is not earning profits on a sustained basis, it is not earning sufficient profit, it is incurring losses. So naturally, there would be loss of tax revenue for the government. So this is number one. Secondly, in such sick enterprises, scarce resources remain tied up. And let me take example of some public sector enterprises. So if a public sector enterprise has gone sick, they will still be supplying raw materials, they will still be ordering raw materials, they will still be receiving supplies of raw materials, they will be still ordering the various supplies of various different parts. And such resources which are very, very scarce in nature, which are not which are not available in sufficient quantity, then they remain tied up with these sick units. So the other units which are being viable, which are doing well, which are profitable, they simply do not get sufficient resources for themselves, because quite a significant volume of resources remain tied up with these sick units as well. Then there is an increase in NPAs also. Increase in NPAs, non-performing asset. When we talk about non-performing assets, basically we are talking about the banking sector. And what is a non-performing asset for a bank? What is an asset for a bank? The loan that a bank has given to some customer or to a firm. So in the former case, it is a retail loan, and the loans can also be provided to a business firm, to a commercial enterprise. So that is an asset for a particular bank. Now if the person who has borrowed this money, or the entity, the organization, the commercial enterprise which has borrowed this money from the bank, they are not able to repay it to the bank is not paid back that amount along with the interest, then such assets are called non-performing assets, because they are simply not able to perform, which means they are not simply able to earn any interest for the bank. So they are known as non-performing assets. And you also know that the other term for this is bad debts. So naturally, if a particular enterprise becomes sick, that particular enterprise would not be able to return the loan that it has taken from the various banks. It would not be able to make the repayment. At times, we have seen this earlier also while we were discussing symptoms. It would delay such repayments. It would many a times default on such repayments, which means it would not pay the amount due to the bank, and naturally that will lead to an increase in NPAs in the bank. In the last few years, this has become a major problem for Indian banks, and specifically during the corona crisis also, it is expected that once the figures are out for 2020-21 financial year, it would be probably found that the NPAs have risen as a percentage of total outstanding loans. So as a percentage of the amount that it has been loaned by the bank, the NPA amount is expected to increase in 2020 and 2021 financial year. The reason is simple: because of the corona pandemic, many of the industries had to close down. They had to wind up their processes, their operations, and they were not able to return the money to the bank. They became sick and were not able to return the money to the bank. Again, if an industrial enterprise goes sick, then what will happen? They will ultimately at some point of time will have to reduce their cost, and to reduce their cost, what will they do? They will reduce their manpower cost. And how do they do that? They will ask people to leave. They will lay off people, or maybe they might retrench people. Layoff and retrenchment, the difference is layoff is only for a temporary duration, while retrenchment is permanent. So they will have to retrench people, they will have to lay off people, and ultimately jobs would be lost. And you might have seen in 2020-21 so many industrial enterprises which have stopped operating or which have not been able to operate because of the corona pandemic. So many people working in those enterprises have lost their jobs, either permanently or temporarily. And there naturally, of course, there would be loss of production, and loss of production means that the GDP growth rate might also get impacted. So these industrial enterprises would stop producing, or they would reduce their production volume. So naturally the production volumes would be lower, and this ultimately would lead to suppression of the GDP, gross domestic product. Then let us talk about what we can do to prevent industrial sickness. We have seen that industrial sickness leads to so many issues. It causes problem for the banking sector, it leads to unemployment, it causes problem for the GDP growth rate also. Then there are so many scarce resources which are actually cornered by these sick units, and then naturally the government's earnings, tax revenue earnings also suffer. So we need to understand how we can prevent industrial sickness, because that ultimately would mean that we don't have to face all these problems that we have discussed in this particular slide. So what we can do? So first thing that you can do is you have to arrest sickness at the incipient stage. Right in the beginning, we have to be able to arrest the sickness to stop the sickness from spreading further. So this has to be done right at the beginning, when the symptoms have started appearing, and we have talked about the symptoms in the last session. I hope you remember. Let me take you back to what we had done in the last session. So these are the symptoms. So once we get to know the symptoms, once we are able to identify the symptoms, we should be able to try and arrest the sickness at that very point of time, before the situation worsens further, before the losses balloon further, increase further. We have to arrest the sickness at that point of time. And for that, we need to keep monitoring for the symptoms. So we have discussed so many symptoms. For example, people start leaving jobs when their employer firm is about to go sick or is incurring losses on a regular basis. Many a times such sick firms, they are not able to pay their PF dues on time. They do not have the ability to repay the banks on time. So these are all symptoms which we can actually identify to forecast which particular firm is going to be sick in the time to come. And that is where we should kick in the preventive measures. So for example, we have said that banks also identify from the financial data. Banks can also identify from financial data that a particular firm is not doing well, it is incurring losses. And why do banks have access to this kind of financial data from the company? Because they have provided loan. I have told you earlier also in the last class session that since the banks have provided loans, so they have the authority to have a look at the various financial data of the borrower firm. So they can look at that data, and the borrower firm is in fact obligated to provide this particular data to the bank. So they can have a look at this data and they can easily determine which particular firm is not doing well and which particular firm the losses have been increasing in the last few years. They can forecast easily that this particular firm is going to become sick in the time to come. Right? So this financial data can also tell us the story whether a particular firm is doing well or not. For example, the stock statements. What has been the volume, inventory level stocks? Have they been reducing? Is there a piling up of stocks, which means the finished product is not getting sold in the market. So these kind of inspection reports can help us find out, can help us identify the symptoms. Then penal action against principals for delayed payment. What do we mean by this? I hope you remember, and I talked about the example of Nestle, hypothetical example I had taken up in the last session, where I talked about the external causes for sickness, and one of the causes, many a times, the firms to whom these firms have sold their product, which means their customer firms, they are not ready to make the payment for the purchase promptly. They delay the payment. So we had talked about this mechanism. Now in such cases, if we can take some penalty actions, take some penal action, we can impose some penalty on these principals. Principals are the customer firms. So let me give you the example of Nestle again, and this is again a hypothetical example. Suppose there is a firm X and it supplies packaging material to Nestle. Now who becomes the principal here? Nestle. And if Nestle is delaying payment, they are not providing payment promptly to the supplier firm X. Now what will happen after a point of time? If this happens on a sustained basis and for a long period of time, X might become sick. So what we can do in this particular case is we can penalize, we can come up with some regulations of this sort, and we can penalize Nestle for not making the payment promptly. In fact, I told you last session also, the government of India has asked many of the PSUs who have been making purchases, who have been getting supplies from such smaller firms, to make the payment for these supplies in a very prompt fashion, so that these smaller firms, they continue to remain viable, right? Then management consultancy. I hope you recall that one of the causes was that many a times these enterprises do not have access to management expertise. So we can provide them management consultancy. Consultancy means advice. So we can provide them management advice. For example, we can provide them advice on how to do market research, how to promote your product, how to ensure quality production, how to ensure that the employees are happy so that then they are able to produce products of good quality. So all these things, they can be told to these firms, they can be advised to these firms, and this is wherein management consultancy plays a very, very prominent role, right? So, and by doing this, we can ensure efficiency enhancement through management consultancy, wherein we can reduce costs, wherein we can increase revenue, wherein we can make the production process more efficient, how we can extract more work from the same number of machines or from the same manpower. So this is what we mean by efficiency enhancement increase. Then norms for surplus allocation for depreciation. What do we mean by this? I had told you earlier also that many a times, so many firms, they earn a surplus, but what do? They simply divide it among their shareholders. They do not keep a reserve for use in future, right? So we can come up with such norms. There could be some norms which define that at least this much amount of the profits have to be kept with the company, with the firm, as surplus reserves, and these reserves can then used for expanding the operations, or to make the processes more efficient by buying new technology, by buying new equipments, or for getting the older equipments replaced. So this is what it means basically. You design some norms so that a particular firm which is earning profit, they have to save some of this profit. They do not have to distribute it. They have to save it for future use whenever their old machines are due for replacement. So this is what basically is meant by this. Older machines get depreciated every year, and after some point of time their value becomes almost zero or close to zero, and then these machines have to be replaced. So there could be norms for defining such surplus allocation, how much of the profit earned should be saved as surplus, so that in future whenever an older machine has to be replaced, then that particular older machine could be replaced. So these kind of things can be done. Then manpower could be trained so that they are able to work more efficiently. They are able to understand how to be more efficient in the operations. For example, we could train manpower so that the trained manpower then can market the product, or maybe understand what the customer needs by conducting market research, or maybe ensuring that the product that is being produced has a good quality level, or maybe we can train this manpower to work more efficiently. So all these things can be done. Ultimately, this might prevent industrial sickness. And then if nothing works, then we have to rehabilitate also. What do we mean by this? Rehabilitate means a particular firm has gone sick. Now we cannot do anything to prevent sickness, but once the sickness has struck, then we can do something to nurse the sick enterprise back to health. And how do we do that? One thing is debt restructuring. Now what do we mean by this? Debt restructuring. Let me give you a hypothetical example. Supposing I run a firm and I have taken loan from a bank and I have to pay back the amount in 36 monthly installments, which means 3 years only. I have to pay back this amount in just 3 years. And the rate of interest is 10%. So every month I will have to pay back a larger amount, but I only have to pay for 3 years. Now this is otherwise okay, but if a particular firm is facing financial problems, then they would find it very, very difficult to do this. So what do? Can we restructure this debt? So can we increase the duration? And why are we increasing the duration? So that monthly installments, how much I have to repay every single month, that amount reduces. So instead of repaying in just 36 months at an interest rate of 8% or 10%, I might be asked to repay the loan in 7 years or 84 installments. And because of this, what might happen is my monthly installments would be far lower, and it would be possible for me to make the repayments on a sustained basis continuously without defaulting on them. Fine. So it could so happen that when earlier the installment period was 3 years, 36 months, then I was paying every year 1 lakh. Every month I was repaying 1 lakh. But now since the repayment period has been increased to 7 years or 84 installments, I would probably be okay with just making a repayment of 60,000 per month, which would be far more easier for me to do as a firm, and I would not go sick and I would not have to default on my repayment. So this is one more thing that can be done. And again, many a times they can be given enhanced working capital. This was done during the corona pandemic. This kind of facility was started by the government through a particular scheme. So what will happen if they will have more access to working capital? They will be able to buy inventory. They will be able to make payment against various dues like electricity dues, and because of this, they might return to viability again. They might become viable again. So that is why we are saying that enhancement of working capital, sometimes this kind of facility can also be provided. Though a particular firm is not doing well, they have been incurring losses, but if you provide them some working capital so that they can buy additional raw material, increase their production volumes, and then sell more items in the market, they might be nursed back to health. Fine, they might be able to get over their sickness. And for this, basically till 2016 we had a system called Board for Industrial and Financial Reconstruction. So whenever a particular firm would go sick, that particular firm would be referred to BIFR, Board for Industrial and Financial Reconstruction. And the job was to try and revive and rehabilitate the enterprise. Revive means to nurse it back to health, to make it viable again, to make it start earning profits again. So this could be done. So this used to be done by BFR. So if a loss-making enterprise was referred to them, they would try to come up with some change of tactics, change of strategies, so as to revive the firm, so as to nurse it back to health, so as to make it profit making again, so as to bring it from red, that is incurring losses, to black again, that is earning profits again. So this was the first thing that they used to do, but if somehow they failed in it, they moved over to the second aspect, and that used to be the liquidation of non-viable companies. So they used to liquidate the non-viable companies, trying to sell it off to some other buyer who is willing to buy it, or to then, if no buyer is turning up, no buyer is willing to buy these loss-making firms, then the assets used to be liquidated, just simply sold away, so that as much as possible so that the monetization could take place to the extent possible, which means the the people who have actually, the banks or the entities who have actually lent their money to these SIC firms, that money could be returned to these people or banks or the entities. So that was the whole idea behind this kind of step of liquidating, but that was only used as a last resort if the companies were not able to be revived. If the companies could not be revived, then only this particular step was kicked in, right? But now we have another option, and which is insolvency and bankruptcy code. In fact, in 2016 IBC came up, and because of this it was thought that there is no use of BIFR anymore, and now this is a much better mechanism, though this is not part of the scope of this particular syllabus, so I'll only be touching upon very brief. So touching upon insolvency and bankruptcy code in very brief. So basically IBC is a far better process to ensure that the creditors, those who have actually lent some money to these SIC enterprises, they are able to recover as much of their dues as possible. So for example, if a bank has formed a consortium with 5 other banks to lend to Kingfisher, and if Kingfisher goes sick, becomes a SIC enterprise, then IBC kicks in and tries to recover as much of the dues of these 5 or 6 banks who have lent to Kingfisher. So as much of their dues as possible they would try to recover and would try to give it back to the creditors, right? So this is basically how IBC functions. And for the various cases that actually are reported under IBC, we have a National Company Law Tribunal, NCLT, and then we also have an Appellate Tribunal, NCLAT. So they actually take care of such proceedings wherein the recovery is being done, wherein the amount of the creditor that is due to them by a borrower firm which has turned sick, that particular amount, the whole process of recovering that amount is fixed and decided. So that is why after insolvency and bankruptcy code, now we also have a very major role of National Company Law Tribunal. Now please do not think that NCLT did exist earlier. They did exist earlier, but under IBC they have been given powers to decide on such cases which are referred to them under the IBC 2016, wherein a particular firm is not able to pay back to its creditors, and the creditors then can report such matters, and then it is for NCLT to give a ruling on what is to be done next. Fine. So this is what you need to remember: the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 and the NCLT tribunals, basically, which are meant to hear cases under IBC 2016. Fine. So with this, we come to the conclusion of Unit 5 and also the conclusion of this very subject, Indian economy. I hope you recall that you had been given some projects. Very soon your project presentations would be taking place, and how many marks you would be able to score in your internals would depend entirely on how well you make these presentations. Thank you very much for your time.